Monday morning. Monday morning. This is my handy. If you wonder what I'm reading off of, I'm reading off of an iPad mini. Isn't that beautiful? Monday morning. iPad mini. I got this guy a couple years ago. Just more of that real estate money. How did I spend a half a million and not hold on to it? Well, I bought a lot of toys, did a lot of stupid shit. Some good vacations in there. Good vacation costs 5 to 10 grand to do something decent with people you care about. But Monday morning. But yeah, this is I never use this. It's just being stupid in the culture. I infected myself with consumerism in order to teach you guys how to overcome it. And then as I started to lose all the things in my life and gave them up and got evicted and let them take my apartment and all my things in my apartment, I kept a couple things and I knew eventually I was going to give up the cell phones. So this keeps me connected as much as I need to be. Um, and also and I like it. It's out of all the things that I've kept, this is a very useful tool. I'm glad I didn't go just anti-materialistic completely. It's been very helpful. I also kept this microphone, which this microphone is pretty badass. Hopefully the audio doesn't cut out when I move it. The audio cuts out. Let's test. This is a Samson mic. There we go. It's a very, I just Google shit. It was a pretty good quality mic for a tiny little travel mic. And then I have a Logitech Carl Zeiss Tessar HD 1080p. Are you that important, Carl, that your name has to be on my fucking camera? Come on, man. Alright, so Monday morning. This is anyways, I'll read it. I'll talk about it afterwards. The Monday morning paper read another. Humble people live among the traffic. The Monday morning paper read, another soldier dead. The Monday morning paper cried for our side. Pools of ink began to spread. He couldn't read what else was said. He washed his hands and stepped into the sunshine. His Monday morning neighbor bought a ribbon. His Monday morning neighbor felt forgiven. They chatted about over there just enough to try to care, and thank God for the lives that they were living. The Monday morning office ran the figures. The Monday morning office kept growing bigger. They made sure not to think too far past payments for the house and car. It never crossed their minds who pulled the trigger. The Monday morning paper read, another soldier dead. The family confirmed reports he'd just come home from war. They said he waited for the cops, responding to the rifle shots, an armed man holding up a liquor store. Fuck you and fuck your war. Against the weak, against the poor. Another soldier dying so investors can't get paid. Another Monday morning in the fucking USA. And then this part is spoken. We imposed economic sanctions against the country of Iraq in order to kill over 1 million civilians and weaken the population before an eventual invasion. Following a pattern of behavior established over the last century, America's first priority has been to ensure that its corporations and the global finance syndicate can continue to exploit the natural resources of the world, regardless of who happens to be living on top of them. Killing for peace. Piece of the pie. So that's a good encapsulation of my beliefs then and now. And that's what art does. Art shouldn't have to be revised. It's the word on the subject. If your thoughts change or the subject changes, you create new art. But this is my, having read about the war and having felt this and processing out my insecurities. So in my love life and in my professional life around this time, I probably got that pretty big account from my parents. So it's like when we have our arguments, it's like, I'm just trying to make you money. Just leave me the fuck alone. It's like being able to like tell someone, look, I could do what you do. Can you do what I do? Is like a big boon. Like when you're young and you're insecure, it's mostly because you haven't done shit. But once you start doing shit, you start being able to, like, look at LeBron James. He's like, I love how he's playing for the Lakers right now, or how he's been playing the last couple of years. I'm a Kobe stan. I've never liked LeBron, but you got to recognize greatness. And after Kobe left basketball, who else can you watch? I like Westbrook. He's an LA guy. He plays a little too angry for my taste. I mean, but his passion is crazy. Just he's a little out of control. Damian Lillard is amazing. He's like Kobe, where like the game is never lost when you have that dude on your team because he'll just put up points like crazy. Um, you got some other people. What's his name? Anthony Davis is exactly who he thought he was going to be coming into the league. He just knew exactly what his potential was, and he's been living up to it. No one since LeBron probably has like been that assured of like, yeah, this is who I am. I'm going to be a fucking legend. He's like surpassing it. I didn't know he was going to get so big, dude, for being so tall. And he's, yeah, his physicality. He's like the Greek freak too. To be that physical and then also be that athletic. But LeBron is like coming into his own in terms of power, where he talks about like, what does he say? I have nothing left to prove, or he's like, I've done. Once he brought a title to Cleveland, this is all just like bonus. And I hope he gets three more and he gets his own little place in history. It's like when that's all life is about, is trying to squeeze as much as you can out of this one chance. So I'm getting a little bit of that. I still have to be published, of course, and I have to prove myself in the public eye as far as writing. But when you write something like my songs or other stuff, like I know I'm good. I like what I do, and I know that it's a part of the process. But that type of confidence, and then also that type of definitive, like this is what happened. If you look at the historic record at the very end, we imposed economic sanctions that weren't ethical. This is just what the historic record is. Over 1 million civilians died because of those sanctions. Their economy, their social fabric was weakened. It's the same thing we did with Cuba. We just weakened an enemy because of ideological. Well, no, the ideological stuff is how we get our followers to agree with us and believe in us. But we always do these things for a profit motive first. Killing for peace, piece of the pie. And that's what this little blurb at the very end is like. I wrote the poem because I'm thinking these things, and then I read the news and I get another sense of injustice. And the Obama fandom is only growing bigger during this time as he runs for president, or maybe this was right after. Yeah, probably as he runs for president, 2000, and then he just got elected too. I think around this time, 2007 to 9, around then, when I wrote these poems, I was reading a lot. I'd have to look in my emails to actually tell this timeline because there'll be like a Northern California trip or another like sidetrack. But I could be disgruntled. I could be, I don't think I would turn violent. I say I identify with like these shooters and these terrorists. Like I identify with people who don't find a home within the dominant narratives. But I've always been very careful to acknowledge that I'm not a violent person. I have other gifts and attributes. And what we want to do is we want to create more space within our society for people to express themselves other than violently. Violence is a lack of options. And I'm not excusing people. That's not, it's a disservice to yourself and your ideas to be violent because then you push people away. But I understand desperate people. You can understand something without condoning it. In fact, that's the art of warfare. Understanding your enemy doesn't mean that you're abandoning your side or your troops. And it doesn't even mean that you're agreeing with your enemy's values. Understanding your enemy just means that you want to win the war. Understanding life just means that you want to be able to function within life. I understand violence. I understand desperation because I've seen it personally and around me. Yeah, it's ignorant to think any less. It's propaganda to think any less. Or it's a lie. It's just falsehood, false narrative. So these people who don't read enough into again, not to blame them. They have their lives going on, their pressures. I've lived my life in such a way to avoid the pressures that most other people have. I didn't stay in college to get $100,000-$200,000 in debt. Got a little 10 grand, which I'm dealing with in my own way. I've never been scared to tank my credit. That's why I did it now after going up to the 700s, and then I tanked it just to my little fuck you before I become a public figure. You can't use that against me. And also, it's a challenge. Let's see how long it takes me to get it back. Now it's terrible. I bet you in 2 years I can get it back to 700s. I'm not going to be down and out forever. I'm just covering the spectrum. I was up, and now I'm at the bottom just to walk myself back up. I'm taking an audit. My folks are like, every now and then when they give me too much grief, like, oh, you know what? You should be more grateful. Everyone on this poverty journey, when I'm hanging out with them, at one point gets mad at my arrogance and says, you should be a little bit more humble, seeing where you're at right now in life. And I'm like, this is my path. I'm checking on you, checking on our relationship. I don't give a shit about my things. If you want me to leave, I got 2 bags and I walk this earth, and the earth is my home. So I'll take my 2 bags and get the fuck out of here, which I have. But I think this is my last stop for now. This is where I was going to make my stand, because these are the people I care about the most in life. I don't have a family, and I've never invested enough in a relationship to have that be the one. I told my folks I was going to get them out of their situation, and we've come back to that. I thought I was going to do it through real estate, and I think I was putting the cart before the horse. It's more about getting your head right before you get the money. The money will come. So we're getting their head right. Monday morning paper read, another soldier dead. Monday morning paper cried for our side. Our side. So another soldier dead. What do you do when you read the paper and you see that a soldier died in Iraq or Afghanistan? And we know that those wars were started for false reasons. Do you feel bad? What do you do when before the NBA game they bring out the troops to thank them and then do the national anthem? Do you feel like you have an obligation now to make sure those troops aren't being abused or put in harm's way, or have we done enough? Well, it seems like the common narrative is that when you have introductory clause, it's Monday morning, which is after the weekend. So Monday morning quarterbacking, what happened in the week, and then Monday morning we comment on it. So the conceit of this poem is just, I read the news and then I'm getting high or I'm working out, and my anger and my emotions, because anger is usually the first emotion. And this is something I keep coming back to when I think about emotions. That's why when you're angry, you want to be aware. I've never been one to tell people to ignore their emotions. I don't think that's healthy. Suppression and everything. So a lot of my beliefs seem to coincide with cognitive behavioral therapy, and I should probably later on look into that more. But like anything, I'm establishing what I believe first, and then I'll check out what they believe and see where we agree and disagree. Because where we disagree might be their blind spots as well as my own. So it seems to tie in with Eastern philosophy and Zen and Buddhism, some Buddhism, but the non-dogmatic one. Dogmatic Buddhism is the Dalai Lama telling us that there is a spiritual fight between East and West because he's a fucking shill for the CIA. That's a whole nother subject. But Zen Buddhism is you sit on top of Buddha's head and don't respect anything that came before, because that's the highest level of respect you can give the sincere, is thinking for yourself. But that's the sidetrack. So Monday morning, the conceit is commentary. This is my own lyrical, melodic poem. Soldiers dead, that's the subject we're talking about. The Monday morning paper cried for our side. So now that's the approach. That's my judgment. For our side, that's probably the strongest language so far. The 4th line is ethnocentrism. Pools of ink began to spread. Now we got like a little imagery. He couldn't read what else was said. So it's like, why do we not care about? We don't care about it because of our cognitive dissonance. But that's going to bore someone, and it's going to read like a psychology textbook. So instead, you have this image of ink spreading, and so you can't read what else was said because of the ink, and the ink spreading like the blood of the soldier who died. So I really like that figurative, fantastical imagery. I started to read poetry from the turn of the 20th century, like Garcia Lorca, and they fucking write like they're on like mushrooms, or they're on like, I love like Ken Kesey, One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest. Image metaphorical stuff, but written literal. So like stuff is just blending into each other. When someone comes down a hallway, their energy and personality explodes out of them in colors and images and shapes. And you can see where the metaphor is, but it's really demanding on the reader, because the reader really has to give a lot to the story to make sense, to find the literal thread among all these fantastical images. I forgot what that's called. Is that Surrealism, I think it's called. But I like it. So it's a little surrealistic, pools of ink and stuff. Couldn't read what stuff was said. He washed his hands and stepped into the sunshine. And then that ink on your hands, but also washing your hands is giving up responsibility. And then we have the contrast of sunshine. So as a poet, I feel like I'm developing. This is like, you might not like the poem, and it might be a simplistic form, but there's choices just like in my chess game. It's not the, I'm still developing, but I'm recognizing what I'm doing good and what I'm doing poorly. In chess, I need to clean up my game a lot. I feel like I would improve 100, 200 points just by not making so many unforced errors. But I'm starting to get into situations where I'm fighting over position, which is a lot different than just trading pieces back and forth. I'm starting to recognize places I want to be on the board, and then my strategy now no longer is to just checkmate the other person or to get material advantage, but is to secure certain positions that I feel will be strategically advantageous. So I'm starting to not have a simple strategy, but more complex, where there's certain areas within the game that I try to secure, or pieces that, and so instead of trying to do A to B, I want to do A to like M, and then there's a lot of steps in between that I'm trying to secure in order to make sure that my piece M move, the like 10th move, is to control a certain area, a certain square. And that's that level, that's that later on level, like more subtle strategy, gaming. I think in any, like when you watch basketball, the more basketball you watch, the deeper it could get, until you're a professional, I guess. Where like you see that these guys are running more and more complex systems. It's like they're looking at deeper level options. It's not as, so the same thing with constructing art is the technique is coming out more, even in simple stuff like this. His Monday morning neighbor bought a ribbon. Monday morning neighbor felt forgiven. Yeah, that's, now we have a judgment, ethnocentric, for our side. And then now what do they do? He washed his hands. It's not my problem. I've done what I could do. I bought a ribbon. And so that's my question, I guess, to the public is, are the narratives they give us, support our troops, this and that, are those enough for you? Do you feel like you're supporting the troops enough? Or do you owe them your effort in establishing the historic record? And if that, what I said earlier, which I really like, if that social contract was broken between the leaders and the soldiers, where we put them into harm's way unnecessarily, does your support for the troops include seeking justice for soldiers who've been abused or taken advantage of? Because I feel like it does. I don't feel like the ribbon does shit. We need to take care of people who have needs, so the VA and the physical needs and psychological needs, but I think also there's a justice factor, isn't there? But no, this guy in the poem's forgiven, him and his neighbors. They chat about over there just enough to try to care. I've had these conversations. I had this conversation with someone in a bar. What I'm starting to, as I develop a clearer way of thinking, which I feel like I've always had, I'm just walking back to, as I left my more materialistic life. I'm going to be materialistic again. I'm going to get right as comfortable as I was, even more so. It's actually the beginning of this journey was I needed to take that next step. I just want to do it in my art form and not in real estate, but I'm going to get a lot of nice shit in life, and I'm going to, but that ego knocks the thoughts out of your head sometimes. I'm noticing as I be able to articulate my clarity of thought more, and I notice other narratives and belief systems. A way to describe it is that your subconscious is a monkey pushing books off the higher shelves of your consciousness, so your words are tumbling out of your mouth like the books off the shelf. I'm not talking to the words coming out. I'm talking to the monkey. I'm talking to the reason why you're talking. So when I talk to people, and then if you pay attention to how someone talks that closely, where you're recognizing their values and their belief systems, you can start addressing those, as well as the conversation, of course. And I did that one of the first times in the wild. Like, I've always think I had intuitively that sense, but I wasn't consciously doing it. I was doing it for self-interest. To sell stuff, I noticed I really had to have a vibe with a person, or to start a relationship romantically. It was because people liked me, and I have a charisma to me. And the charisma doesn't come from something just like humor or being, it comes from something else. It comes from being able to identify value systems and align myself with them. Be be the type of person that this individual in front of me likes. And it's not one type of person, it's like a chameleon. Like, be able to tell what someone's values are and then align with those values so they recognize me as a part of the tribe. That's what I think the survivor learns from an early age, being in a family that like argued a lot, and like also having a mind where I like to look at things at different perspectives. I get along with most anyone, and that's what's also kept me safe in a lot of situations. When I go on the street, I can hang out with the homeless, I can hang out with the money people. Um, the my druggy friend, I could go do heroin with her for a weekend and we rage it up. But the I'm learning in my older age, in my 30s now. I felt like I needed this year to learn how to control my energy more. And doing that, this has been a practice. In February or March, I went to a bar with some of my bros. This young guy in his 20s, big guy, white kid. He's trying to be like Arnold, bodybuilding. It's pretty big right now, so he's pretty yoked out. We talk about like our manly stories about fighting and stupid stuff, and he told me how he's from Orange County, but he was stayed at my place for a while, so we became friends. I liked his spirit. We would smoke weed and he would never say no, and I like people who are like just confrontational maybe, but not in a violent way, but more in a like when you test them and they don't back down. So it's like when people smoke with me, it's like some people do this who smoke a lot. They're like, all right, I'll smoke until you tap out. And I've been like, dude, I can't get high anymore. I'm done. I'm nonverbal. It's like, so it's been done to me too. It's just a fun, like, if you enjoy weed and you have a lot of weed and you ain't got shit to do, it's like, let's see how high we can get. So that's what the first thing I liked about him is like, he would just like get so fucking high on me. I'm like, wow, this kid is like, because when I was his age, I couldn't do that. Like, it takes a strong mind to really fucking put yourself in, because weed at one point will make you somewhat uncomfortable. So you have to really fucking either know who you are or just not give a fuck. And I think he's still figuring out who he is, but he has a lot of fuck it in him, so I like that. But because of that, he gets himself in like some scrapes. So we're talking about, he's like, he knocked this kid out and he cracked his head on the pavement and he could have killed him. And he wondered. So he has that reflection too, which is what I like. He's wondering what type of man he wants to be. And so going into public place with that dude, I know he's like a solid dude. You know, if we get into something, he's not gonna like, we're not gonna like get in a fight, but like he's like very physically confident. And then we have these two other kids who are underage. I take them to a bar where I'm pretty sure they could sneak into the back. They're staying with me for Airbnb, so it's me, the big Orange County bro, who's like all about Trump and shithole countries, because right now what makes sense to him at 22 is male aggression. And he has no nuance and no sensitivity. I see it within him. I met his mom. She came by to say what's up when she was visiting New York. So I know he's a good kid and he has a good heart. He needs to broaden his perspective of life. He tells me about all this female conquest, but he probably needs more love and less sex. He needs a girl to open up his heart. That's what softened me a lot is the good females in my life, and then also suffering. And hopefully he learns it before he engages in too much self-destructive behavior. So he's there. These other two kids are there who are like 18 and 19. And then I'm like the guy who's showing them around town. So like the bro is definitely bringing out my bro energy. And then there's this guy who's a little bit taller than me. So he's like maybe 6'1". And he's a decent build. And I think he's Swedish. I got his email. I should probably email him. But for some reason, I've taken mushrooms a couple times by then that year, like once or twice, and thinking about my energy and thinking about these politics. These ideas are just coming back at the beginning of 2018. Right now we're in November, but this is like February, March. So I'm just starting to remember who I was and how idealistic I was before I started just making money. And this guy's wearing like a fucking camo jacket. And so like I'm thinking about war. I'm reading like Samantha Powers and arguing with her in my mind and reading Ben Rhodes. I don't think I'd read his yet. I watched The Final Year with Obama. So I have a lot of political, like, just in the back of my mind is like constantly arguing with dominant narratives like stuff that I feel is wrong in every fiber of my being. So it's a bit of a trigger, probably, as the kids say nowadays. This guy wearing that camo jacket. And so everyone's talking politics and these bar conversations, and there's a pool table, of course, so we're playing pool and talking, and people get rowdy when they're drinking. And I didn't drink that much, but I drank enough to like be a little loose with my mouth. And so he's talking to the friends about, oh yeah, and this and that, about what's going to happen in foreign policy and Trump. And then I'm just waiting, not giving my opinion. But he's an instigator. He's trying to get everyone's opinion. He's a clever guy, and he has a good job. As people in Manhattan seem to do, is that it attracts strong personalities. It attracts people who make money and just know that, like cockiness, especially if you're at a bar. So he has a good job, and it turned out he had like a young family. He had just gotten married, and he just had a kid. But so he's saying something about the war, and I finally say, like, man, you don't even know what you're talking about. And in real life, those soldiers are getting taken advantage of. And this is all a con for money. And these wars have no justice in them. But you guys quarterback it like it's a video game or like it's a ball game, when there's real people out there dying for other people's profits. And you're wearing that camo like it's a fucking like it's a sports team. When I have like friends over there, and I have friends and family who've suffered from these injustices, and that's what it is. It's an injustice. It's not a game that then you give your sideline commentary on, and that's just reality. And those aren't the exact words, but I just try to bring that perspective. That like in this type of same tone, I was in this mood of like very calm, very like I feel very in control of myself. And he tries to give me a little bit like, oh well, this or that. Like he's still smiling. I'm not smiling. It's not. We're grounding it in life or death. We're not grounding it in. And then so now he's still kind of like and also I'm as a dude just kind of like drawing a red line, like this is, I've told you, friends and family are dying because of these things that you're making you're giving your unfounded opinion on. And then who knows, maybe if he had soldiers, friends, or family, I would have triggered him, and then we would have had a real violent confrontation. But as it is, he kept running his mouth, and so I just got a little more personal, and I was like, he said something about, it's just the Viking way, because he talked about his Nordic country he was from. I forgot, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and about, oh, we're just, warfaring people. And I was like, no, you're not, man, because you have a corporate job, and I just look at you, and I do real estate, and I could pretty much like categorize what type of person you are, because you're living in this, it was Tribeca. You live in this neighborhood, the apartments cost this or that, $2,500, $3,000. You're making $100,000, $150,000, and you're upset because you're in an office and you're not actuating your manhood, and so you're taking it out in these conversations where you do it through other people. But again, those other people are suffering injustice, and so you're basically borrowing the manhood of victims in order to make yourself feel better, because you have no manhood left, because you bought into a society which offers you no manhood. It just offers you the ability to be in a bar and run your mouth. To say shit like that to people, like to their face in that tone, and just kind of look at them and shut up. It's like, speak on it. I've said my piece. What's your piece? I've offered you a better description of reality than you've offered me. And in that description, I believe I'm more noble. I have these traits that you claim are important to you, manhood, other stuff. And I'm backing that up by saying it to you very confidently. And I just waited for his conjecture. Is anything I've said wrong or different? And he just stared at me, and he was like, I could smash you in the face right now. And I just stared at him, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, well, I won. You fucking, really? It was that easy? But it was like, I guess that's the danger of confronting people's narratives, is behind the veil of illusion is violence. He's not going to tell me I'm right, and he's not going to tell me he's wrong, and that going to college and getting that nice job and everything was a mistake, and now his young family is a mistake, and that he feels he's not going to admit to the existential angst which he's acting out on, which is like wearing the camo and trying to be this Viking. He has a story, he tells himself that he's a Viking warrior, and he acts that story out in his corporate job. I think he was in media, he was an ad guy, so he was in the bullshit industry. And I just was like, no, dude, this is the picture of reality as I see it, and I think it's a little bit clearer than yours. And in my picture of reality, you're not a heroic figure. You're kind of like a douche. And so he says, I'm going to hit you in the face. So I just looked at him like, well, So, but I mean, once you're at that point in a conversation, now I've walked myself to a point of like, this is a corner. You don't smile and nod your way out of that. You show weakness now, and he is going to hit me in the face. I was like, you don't want to do that, man. You have more to lose than me. You just talked about your family and everything. Why would you want to get in a bar fight with a dude like me? And then I just repeated that, like, I have a lot less to lose than you, man. And he believed me. Maybe it was a little bit of a bluff. Like, afterwards I realized I think I was like a decent amount bigger than me. And then Frankie I didn't want to say his name, but Frankie, my dude from Orange County, comes over, and he was like, oh, dude, I saw you guys were getting into it. I was like watching it. I was like, nah, it's cool, man. I wasn't worried about fucking Viking, dude. But it's interesting that an honest, direct conversation can break someone's brain like that. Like, for just the cocky dude running his mouth has to resort to violence? That's not who you were claiming to be. Or were you really looking for a fight? You're just looking to run your mouth and be a smartass. But I gave you no other option. And so that's like, and then he tells me later on, we get to know him better, and it's like, this guy, if not before the family, was a little bit rowdier in his past. And so me running my mouth off, that's, I guess, what I call looking for a fight. That's not a good place to be. But maybe that's why the early Zenists, Lao Tzu, and the people who invented Zen and that form of clear thinking and clear talking and really discarding all illusions and just seeing life as it is and exploring consciousness, maybe that's why they developed martial arts and self-defense. Because when you're that direct and clear with someone and you really try to get a correct perspective of the world, but it contradicts their identity and their perspective of who they are, their defense a lot of times is violence. We see that socially. We kill our heroes, which hold a mirror up to us. Anyone who said the clearest political truth or social truth to America has suffered fatal consequences. John Lennon said, war is over if you want it. Took out billboards. Just how clear can it be? If you guys really want to end the Vietnam War, you can. So all this like hand-wringing, blah, blah, blah. It's like John Lennon had a very clear mind right before he died. And then he was killed by an individual. Our pacifists are killed by individuals with no connection to the power structures, of course, at all. There's little evidence of connections, but we don't have enough historic record to put it all together. JFK and then his brother are killed by individuals. It just so happens that it fits into the motives of the power structures. But all these are just individual people, right? Malcolm X, Martin, and then you go internationally. There is a director of the UN, Lumumba. They're finding out that Salvador Allende might have killed Pablo Neruda. Bob Marley died shortly after receiving a gift. If Pablo Neruda died from a bacterial infection that was injected into him, there's a similar way that could have happened to Bob Marley. But we don't have enough facts to actually investigate these things. But there is a trend of people in society and in the world who die for holding up that mirror. And then that was on an individual level, holding up that mirror. And this guy's like, I don't remember what I said exactly to him. I remember how the conversation went. I remember that moment he's looking at me and he's like, I can smash you in the face right now. And I was like, that's when I realized like he was somewhat bigger than me. I was like, all right. I wasn't really trying to walk the conversation there, but then you gotta like, that's the hand I was given, so I'm pretty good at accepting the circumstances. So if I get myself into trouble, but then I usually accept the consequences. And then also something else I learned that night is this: if someone decides to fight you, they don't change their mind, especially not when alcohol's involved. So we made our peace. He walked off. I told the group, I was like, we should probably get out of here. And sure enough, he came back, and I was still trying to be cool with him. I wasn't backing down. I'm not going to let this guy, especially if intellectually I don't think he has a leg to stand on, he's not going to I was being honest with him. You have more to lose than me. So if you're going to be stupid, I'm going to, you might win the fight, but there's going to be like, it's hard to talk about fighting without being too egotistical. But if you're confident if you're physically confident, you're physically confident. And I let him know I was physically confident. But he came back and he kept like touching my face, just little shit that's disrespectful. That like as a dude, it's like this guy is like trying to like look for that fight that like he feels like he should have taken when we were like staring each other down talking. Like we stared each other down talking, and then like we made our peace, our like posturing, guerrilla posturing, and then like I'm just like, you don't want to do that, dude, and then he walks off, and then we chill out. All right, bro, my bad if I fucking irritated you. But he comes back, he's like, hey, this guy over here, what did he tell me? He said, you're just doing that military shit. You're just trying to psychologically break me down. Yeah, I know what you're doing. I was like, no, dude, I'm just trying to live an honest life. But only one of us is. And so when we have a discussion, I'm just speaking my thoughts. I'm not trying to do anything to you except have an honest discussion. But what are you trying to do? You're trying to survive in this world. And those are two different things. That's why this poem reminded me of that story. I believe the fruits of this world, the spoils will go to those trying to live an honest life, because we're just being more efficient. We're going to get the better women. We're going to get the better jobs. We're going to get the money. We're going to get the better experiences, because we don't have fear, and we don't have illusion. And so that's my biggest probably gripe and my biggest advantage over false narratives is they stimulate you through fear, and they confuse you with deception. So you are knowing less about who you actually are and your potential, and less about the context of the world around you. And that's why I'm confident about women too, I guess, is because that seems to attract, like Cary Grant when he said, LSD made me irresistible to women. It wasn't the LSD, it was the framework I believe he was creating of a more honest viewpoint of the world. And women seem to, obviously, because they seek mates, and they're in, this is sociologically evident, and also in your own experience it should be, they're the choosers. And on any dating app, the women are more in control for choosing. 100 guys will, I read about that in my notes in Iraq. 200 guys on the dance floor, dozens of guys, and then like 3 girls in the middle. It's like girls are more selective in their mates, and guys will lower their standards usually. But so that means that women must have, either by biology or through practice, a better ability to choose quality. And so where I'm at in my life, the feedback for my mental state comes a lot from the types of women I attract in my life, and a lot of who I am. And that's why I talk about how I developed to my philosophy of romance and where I'm at now. I talk about its development because I've learned from all of these women I've interacted with, and these really great, strong women. I mean, not just like those are their only characteristics, but these women that I respect a lot have brought out my best nature, I think. And then also they can, like a drug, they can also, destroy you, throw your mind for a loop. That's something I always come back to. The women the drugs within me pale in comparison to the women I've been in. Love is the strongest drug. And this guy's love for his family, probably, when I brought that up, like, look, this isn't going to look good, like, you fighting me if, it's not going to be easy, and you have a young kid and a young wife. That's not a good look as a father. You're not that dude anymore. But talking to him more later on that night, I realized that he wasn't far removed from that dude. And at one point in his life, not too long ago, he wouldn't have allowed people to talk to him like I talked to him. I crossed his own red line. And that's something I have to respect too, is that trying to be honest, trying to talk with people, exploring. And that's why I say it was at the beginning of 2018 when I'm exploring how honest can I be, and what's a way to live, articulating my truth without disrespecting people. In my conversations with him, I probably was. But as an artist now, You don't have to read my poem if you don't want. This isn't me talking to some guy in the bar and trying to find his triggers. As an artist, I want to be as direct as I can, and that's what felt like I was doing in this poem. It was like, oh yeah, you read about that fucking soldier died, and then you just washed your hands. You talked to your neighbor, bought a yellow ribbon, and then you thought, all right, that's fucking cool. Pat yourself on the back. In the meantime, that soldier's pulling up a liquor store, and he's not doing it because he wants to rob the store. He's doing it because he's not offered any other fucking way to live in this world. He's been chewed up and spit out. And no one's talking about the truth. No one's talking about his real experiences over there in the war. No one's talking about justice. No one's talking about the values you're supposed to have as a soldier, about like honor and integrity. We're just treating him like a fucking like warehouse, worker. We're treating him like a fucking like immigrant picking fucking strawberries. We just had one in Thousand Oaks, and he said we'll talk. He stopped his mass shooting in the middle in order to talk on social media. They're just gonna say prayers, thoughts and prayers, and they're not gonna, and it'll just keep happening. Why did he say it'll just keep happening? He might not even be of the right mind to recognize why it keeps happening, but he was upset with something. It was an indictment of society, and his indictment of society in the middle of that mass shooting, I feel, is very similar to my indictment of society in this poem. So there's something there. And if we give these guys better ways to express themselves, they'll be less violent. That's a given. Isn't that self-evident? Is that logical? But that means we have to open up the narratives. We have to open up our social conversation, our culture. We have to open up the story we tell ourselves to include these people who feel like their only way to break through these closed narratives are through violence. So I think about that a lot, that my mouth sometimes is a problem, but also me being able to express these strong emotions has kept me from a lot of other darker paths. And yeah, just like I talked about in another video, or maybe this video, the intersex people in between man and woman. So when I talk about male energy and my male experience, and then females and what I've learned from them, and the intersex are the translators. And my dad was a linguist, and I was supposed to be a linguist in the military. I didn't talk to my dad before I got that job. It's just we fall into these patterns in life, but there's a reason why we fall into them. The people, the women in your life, or your sexual partners, there's a reason why you attract them. And it doesn't have to be some mumbo jumbo hippie shit. It's just patterns, and like recognizes like. So I feel like I've always felt like I'm an sane, I guess you would say. I'm sane, but I got a foot in both worlds. I've always related to people who are a little bit off because I don't buy into this common conception of reality. So I do it, and I've proven I can do it well. But the ones who fall out of it are, I feel like maybe people like me, other people, we have big hearts, and maybe we can try to men's health stuff, mental health, offer them different options. It's a tough thing to say because when you're talking about violence or people who could be violent, you don't want to empower them or condone their behavior. Like this guy, this story in the bar, I'm not saying you go to bars looking for fights. But it was interesting. It was interesting, and I'm still unpacking that and what it meant, and how much was I in the right and in the wrong. Yeah. Was I the asshole? I love that there's a Reddit thread now where people talk about that. It's interesting. Perspectives. We all need a little bit more perspective. The best art gives you a new perspective, right? We'll leave it there.